can we talk a little bit about where you live?
Yeah.
Where do you live?
You want to know about my house?
Well, just tell us geographically where you are in the world.
I live north of Houston, Texas, a little outside in a suburb called Kingwood. It's near the Piney Woods region of Texas, so tall trees, big yard, lots of trails.
Yeah.
Really pleasant, actually, but very removed and very suburban.
Very suburban.
Yeah, get made fun of all the time for my suburban house.
That's
and
like not
and I just
the
don't
typical
care.
young artist doesn't
No,
think of
I don't know
living
anyone else who does it. And
Yeah.
people really wonder what's wrong with me. But hey, I grew up in the suburbs of Dallas. I grew up in this funny area in Omaha before that. I don't have enough money to get the kind of house I really want to in the city that I'd like to live yet. So maybe I will one day, but at this point I wanted to own a home and I wanted to have enough space to make the big drawings.
Yeah.
So I bought a very typical house, which is actually almost my house that I grew up in.
Really?
In the Dallas area. I mean, it's the same maker, you know, the mass producer of whatever, I don't know what it's called, David
Right.
Weekley. Same fixtures, like I haven't even updated the fixtures because I just don't care.
And you like that?
I don't know that I like it. It's a weird thing because it's like I'm living my adult life in my high school house all the time. My studio is in my bed, is basically what my bedroom was.
And was that on purpose?
Yes. Because I feel so comfortable.
So you make these drawings in a bedroom?
In a carpeted bedroom, beige carpet.
Right.
It had awful walls.
I've seen that before.
You've seen, yeah. I did.
Which is amazing because it's not a large room. It's probably like 12 by 14 or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's how big it is.
And these are really large-scale drawings. This is a lot of paper to handle.
Yeah.
In one big
It
room.
barely fits when we roll them and pack them. And the ones that are slightly larger than this, I have to lay upside down on the floor in order to draw on the bottom because the paper goes from floor to ceiling. So
you lay upside down on the floor and draw like that.
Yeah.
Draw upside down.
I have to because if you think about how you lay on your stomach, you can't get your hand accurately to move up to that position. So it's very painful.
You've developed a kind of coordination where you can do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask about that because there is something very physical about these drawings, and number one, they're highly controlled. There is not, well, you have to control everything because you can't have smears. I just think, boy, all this graphite can so easily transfer.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this is about a kind of control, but there are stages. You can't do all this at once because there's so much of an accumulation of marks. So you work with what kind of media?
I work with just graphite, mechanical pencil for the most part. Every once in a while I'll use these big graphite chunks. But a mechanical pencil, everything's office supply, only 2B and HB, 0.5 lead or 0.3 lead. So all these tiny glistening marks are circled with a very tiny pencil so that I can get all of these tiny things. And then I use this thing, a smudge stump, which anyone who's worked, gone to art school knows, to smear the graphite. But mine I've had since 7th grade. My mom gave it to me when I was in 7th grade, and it's the same one.
Still working.
It has this patina of that many, I'm 32, so however old. That no other smudge stump, I can't get it unless I worked for 12 years on making it have that kind of, it's also a different shape than most. It's really specific to how these pieces turn out. And this idea of me needing to be in this carpeted room, I mean, I need to be there to do this. This is very articulated and very considered mark making that I just have to be happy and comfortable. I will never have a studio away from my house. I need to be immersed in my life and in this work all the time, or I go crazy. So, but did I answer your question about material?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, and that's it, pencil. I loved the idea of pencil, paper, period. Move on, work with that forever and ever. And I felt like I had infinite possibilities.
Right.
I know I've secretly told you that I am painting a little bit too. I mean, it came from a painting background. I painted since I was like 4 years old.
Right.
So it's going to happen again, but I don't think I'll ever get to where I am with graphite. I think it's me. I think it was meant to be. This piece is called Phantom Limb, and it's dedicated to a friend of mine named E. Tyler Lindvall. He is a writer, and he had a very tragic accident where he lost his left leg, and very suddenly, and something about that experience and hearing about what a phantom limb is, and a phantom limb is, you know, when your arm is gone but you still feel it. And a lot of times people with amputated limbs wake up with itches where their body is no longer, and intense pains. And that spoke to me of ghosts and of loss and of resilience of the human mind. To believe that that limb is still there when it's been gone for 12 years is just amazing to me. And I could do, you know, an entire museum show filled with pieces that are sort of related to that idea.
What's interesting to me about it is what's missing is us, is
That's
man.
it, yeah.
And so it's, and I'm also returning back to this idea of who's the observer drawing, where in the past, that stage set, there was a kind of omniscient point of view,
Yeah.
you know, and a kind of perspectival construction. In this, who's watching, it's really difficult to understand because there's no figure-ground relationship anymore.
Yeah, and it switches from, you do have a horizon line here and you don't here. So where are you? If they all had a horizon line and still operated like this with floating imagery, you might be able to tell where you are more. But I guess I'm purposely not giving that to us.
Well, in this drawing, you're still missing, things are still floating.
Yeah.
So you do have figure ground, but you can't necessarily trust the perspective of the, let's say, the eye or the camera. Is the eye or the camera upside down? I mean, there's no ground in the other one, so you can't really tell.
Yeah. Are you wondering also like where we are as viewers? Where before you knew you were viewing a whole world.
Yeah.
Here, I think you're immersed in it, and I think you're wading through a very airy, uncomfortable place.
Right.
I think you're, you know, floating yourself sometimes, and I think there are things attacking you from above and things floating towards your head and things moving up and down. I think it is a world without gravity, and I think it's so gravity and horizon are two things we can rely on. I mean, when we talk about weather, we can't only rely on the fact that weather is changing and always in flux. We can rely on gravity always on this earth. And you can't rely on that here anymore. And so those were these very stable elements that I had in my work before. Flat horizon, things are rooted, and now I'm not even giving that to us. So it's actually very devastating what's going on in these works if you position yourselves within them. And it's right on target with the way they're all surrounding us in this room, to where you don't know what you can rely on. There's swells of water, there's sprays of water, the clouds are coming down. I mean, everything's just out of place. It's unsettled and it's uncertain. And personally, that's how I feel most of the time, being a human being on this planet. So this really mimics my headspace more than anything, although it's not as distinct as I would be able to talk about it before, which I like. This piece was drawn right after, or the original impetus for this piece, a smaller version, was drawn right after living in Houston. We experienced a lot of hurricanes, as do people here in Tampa.
Last year.
Yeah, last year. Hurricane Ike was pretty devastating to my community. And I had, in the days preceding what was going to happen with Hurricane Ike, you know, you go and get provisions and water and everything you need.
You did that.
Yeah, and I did it because you have to, just in case. And sure enough, I was without power for 14 days, so needed to.
Oh my. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and at the grocery store, they had a list of warnings of what to do before the hurricane hits. But above that was this amazing printout of a hurricane wave, but they put it upside down. So even though this is a literal example of something that I saw that really stuck with me, I thought that was, first of all, that was just funny. This drawing isn't funny by any means, but it got me thinking. I had been at that same point in my drawings, melding earth to air to tree. Everything was becoming one and becoming abstracted. And so this was, at the time I made this, really the closest thing to an abstraction I had done, because, you know, I've been drawing recognizable imagery with little human figures on landscapes for a long, long time. And there was something about just that very basic idea of flipping the ocean upside down. Also, it looks slightly cartoonish, or these look like tendrils, these look like parts of a you know, maybe a fish or a whale or something. And so I just, you know, there's something so threatening about our weather. I've always lived in Tornado Alley, and when I don't, and now I moved to Houston, so I'm in hurricane zone. And I just thought flipping it upside down made it more terrifying. And it looks like it's coming to life, which
it does.
The ocean actually does.
It's animating, it's kind of groping.
Yeah, it is.
Reaching.
It's reaching out. So it's a threatening drawing about something really threatening that actually happened.
Yeah. And you're an amateur weather watcher.
I am, I know. Most people don't know what that means, but what I do is I call in my favorite meteorologist. It depends on where I am at the time. The highs and lows of the day, and I keep it very private for some reason, but I have a log book of the highs and lows of every day since I was about 19. And a rain gauge, but rain gauges often get messed up by weather and squirrels and birds. Right. So when I happen to be really ambitious, the rain is also gauged along with the weather. Artists like Henry Darger, I found out later, also did the same thing. There's something about taking the temperature every day and figuring out the highs and lows every day that to me is greater than just this like goofy idea of, I mean, it's not funny to me. What it is really recording a sort of mood of that day for every day of my life, because in my opinion the weather sets our mood so accurately. I mean, there's this lid over all of us every day that a lot of people don't pay attention to, but to me it's huge.